Hello, everyone. I'm P. Gonzales, and welcome to RustoGarage, the place where auto enthusiasts can come to find information and resources, ask questions, provide feedback, and connect with other like-minded people all around things automotive. Today, we're spotlighting one of our very special members, VehicleNanny, aka Bill Taylor. Hello and welcome, sir.
Thanks, Pete. Really glad to join you today.
The name VehicleNanny comes from Bill Taylor's very informative and educational automotive online blog, VehicleNanny.com. So please check that out. VehicleNanny is one of the members of RustoGarage and has been very active in our community since we started over 3 years ago. Thank you for your loyalty on that, sir. And I always love learning something about your blogs whenever you write them. So thank you so much for being a part of our community.
I appreciate it. It's a great community of like-minded souls, and quite honestly, probably my favorite automotive theme forum out there, and that says a lot.
Oh, wow. Yeah, with your history and everything, I'm happy to hear that because there's a lot of different ideas out there that just aren't cohesive with what we're doing. So
Yeah, a
thanks for
lot of
being a
good
part.
people, a lot of good people.
Yes, sir. So why don't we just jump right into these questions, get to know a little bit more
Okay.
about you, sir. You've been in the auto industry pretty much your entire life. Is it just you, or does your family have an auto background as well?
I'd like to think that I came upon it naturally, but my dad was an engineer for General Motors back when they called themselves the Chevrolet Truck Engineering. And so he was at the GM Proving Grounds in Milford, Michigan, his entire career. He was part of the key project managers on the launch of the very first K5 Blazer. You might
Oh,
remember that in 1969. And then every four-wheel drive truck after that until he retired in 87. My dad was a great teacher. I learned a lot about vehicles growing up, because he was a development engineer, so he was taking them as they were designed and then perfecting them for production and then improving them throughout the life cycle. So a lot of cool stuff I saw, a lot of cool vehicles brought home. So kind of like life-size Tonka trucks for me.
yeah, great. That sounds pretty awesome. I mean, you kind of got firsthand to see what was coming out before it even came out. Did you ever have any vehicles come home that you got to maybe ride in or test drive in?
Oh, all the time. And of course, I would beg him to bring home something even cooler on a weekend. So, as I got to become driving age in 1976, 1977, Chevrolet reintroduced the Z28 Camaro, which even to this day I'm a big fiend of. And he brought one home on my 16th birthday,
Oh,
and I got a chance to tool around in that one. That was a pre-production vehicle. I guess the statute of limitations is up. I can say that I actually drove that and didn't damage it, but I was supposed to drive it then.
very cool. What an experience. I bet that was awesome for your 16th birthday. How cool.
Yeah.
Um, can you maybe share some memorable highlights from your GM career?
Yeah. So, Dad and I had a little overlap at GM for about 3 years. I joined in 84 in Chevrolet. So my entire career was sales, service, and marketing. I didn't have the engineering chops, quite honestly, Pete. I was good at math, but as soon as objects started going into motion, I lost it. So um, I wanted to be close to the product. So sales, service, and marketing was a great way to do it. I started out on the phones in Chevrolet's customer assistance center, so I got to talk to all the customers and try to help them through their problems. But as a result, because we had to find all their questions answered and help them out, I learned a lot about the company and the inner workings that are there to help them. So that was a great experience. It was a great foundation. And then I got into district sales down in Florida, so I got to work with a lot of great Chevrolet dealers. One of my favorite jobs was as a commercial truck manager in Florida. So I was helping the dealers learn how to sell work trucks at a profit. So that was pretty fun. I was tooling around in step vans and dump trucks and just having a ball. I guess kind of a throwback to my childhood. And then I got to join Saturn in the last 11 years of Saturn's existence. What a cool car company. Still part of General Motors, but somewhat removed. Did a lot of cool stuff there, and a lot of great people and a great retailer network associated with Saturn. It was sad to see that go, but those were the highlights. But believe me, there are a lot of details in between those highlights.
Oh, I'm sure. And kind of in the beginning too, when you got to talk to customer service and hear their problems, you got to actually see and try to figure out firsthand how to fix what was going on and pass that along. So in a sense, you may not have been an engineer, but you got to help the engineers and guide them where they needed to be because you were the first line of defense. You were taking in the problems and then taking the bullets and say, hey, this is what we got to do. So they listened to you, which is great.
Well, let's just say that they kind of listened to me, but more importantly, we were fixing the person more than the car at that point because they're pretty upset.
Sure.
And I understood because I was a car guy, and so I
Mhm.
really empathized with their plight, and I wanted to help them out.
Sure. Sure. Well, great. Thanks for that. What are some of the projects that you've worked in over the past years that you're most proud of?
You know, and I'm sure the good folks at Rust-OIeum will love this, but all of my favorite projects are painting related. Um, you know, and I think probably the funnest one was, teaching my son how to paint, I'll say professionally, but using professional equipment on both the bumpers of a Corvette he and I owned together, a 75 Corvette, as well as he has a Honda CB350 that he totally restored, and he did the tanks and the side covers himself while I was kind of standing behind and giving him tips on how to do two-stage paints.
Very cool. I do remember maybe last year, a while back, you did put in an entry into RustoGarage that you had redone some toolboxes with the Rust-OIeum enamels and all of that. So I was watching your work with Rust-OIeum, and yeah, that's pretty awesome with that.
Yeah, it's I have a long history with Rust-OIeum products, and some of them were great learning experiences.
Sure, I bet, I bet. And you can tell by your background there, you have a lot of stuff up that's been painted and repainted. So I can definitely tell you use a lot of Rust-OIeum. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, any project failures in the past that you can look back and laugh about now?
Yeah, boy, I was afraid you'd ask something like that. When I was in college, poor college student, it was like around 80, 81. I had an older Plymouth Volare station wagon. A lot of viewers may not even know what that is, but it was a mid-sized wagon, a little bit rough, and it was a terrible brown. And the lower half, kind of the area below the molding to the rockers, was chipped, and some of it was rusting. And so the rear quarter I fixed with some aluminum siding I had in the house,
Hmm,
but then I painted the lower half of that car Rust-Oleum gloss black using a Wagner power painter, which is a
there you go.
household thing. I didn't know any better. I didn't thin the paint at all. And I just, one pass, it covered it. And matter of fact, then it started to sag because, as you can imagine, it was put on a little heavy. And I didn't know that you could probably sand it back down and do all these things. So I drove around like that. And I've got a buddy this day that brings that up. And he goes, that was the quietest car because they had about that much paint on the lower
Oh,
half.
yep, some sound dampening on it. That's really
It
great.
was, but I'll tell you what, that paint held up. So,
Oh, I bet. I bet as thick as it was, and I'm sure it held up. That's amazing. You could put on any rust and it probably would have held everything together. So,
oh, yeah, no kidding. Crash
um,
protection too.
yeah, there you go. Well, is there any automotive trends now that you see that maybe you're most excited about?
Excited about, being an old car guy, you always like to look to the past to see if there's something that you could bring forward to ignite that. And I'm not seeing a lot of that. But believe it or not, I'm interested in seeing where our EV products will come into play. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, specifically with changes in the way vehicles are styled. If you no longer need an engine in the front, no longer have to build a hood line to go over this big block. You know, most of these are going to be built into the chassis itself. I think there's an opportunity to get away from some of the traditional SUV two box styling and get into something really cool. That's what excites me. The EV part of it, I'm okay with. That doesn't excite me, but I think the styling opportunities that can come from that, I think that's where I'm most optimistic and where I'm kind of looking forward to see where that goes.
Sure, it's great that you mentioned that. Years ago, I was at a conference actually in Detroit at it was a Smart Coatings Technology conference that I was at.
Was my
And
Volare wagon there by chance?
maybe it probably was. I didn't notice it. Um,
Okay.
but the funny thing is that there was a gentleman there from GM, and he gave a presentation on what the future of vehicles might be like. And it was very interesting. You said that because when you don't need an engine, you don't need these types of things. Do you even need to sit forward? Because you don't need to pay attention on where you're going forward. You can sit backwards, sideways. There's people can have like dinner in their vehicle together at a dinner table as they're driving down the road. They don't need to pay attention where they're going and all that. So that portion of it, technology wise, I'm excited about that as well because people can customize their vehicles before they even get into it, whether it's the paint or the color, anything like that. So it's kind of neat to see that. And the EV side of it, I'm the same way. It takes a lot to get an EV, but the technology behind it, I think, is what we're after. Not necessarily we need the electronic vehicle cars, but what they're bringing to the table. Like I said, probably more user-friendly interspace. Um, you can call an Uber over and say, "I'm in a good mood today. I want my car to be yellow." And you can push a button, your car will be yellow, interior will be yellow, lighting, mood lighting. It's all personalized for you. So that's where I kind of see it going to is more personalization rather than
Yeah, yeah,
specific masses.
yeah. And
So
let's face it, that the internal combustion engine's been in commercially in vehicles for 120 years. It has to evolve. I mean, it's come a long way, and it can do some amazing things in a small package, but
mhm.
it's time to move on. And is it EV? Is it some other propulsion system? Who knows? But EV seems to be what's on the horizon. But I'm more excited to see what can come from that because I think there's other opportunities. I know there's been talk of hydrogen, fuel cells, and all this fun stuff, but um, I'm
But
more
this is where
interested
we're
in
at
seeing,
now. Yeah.
right,
Hmm.
what's next? What's beyond that? And what does that allow us to do? Now, you talked about sitting back with the vehicle, maybe having a styling opportunity that way. I'd like to think about going more forward. I'd think about the old VW buses or the old Ford Econolines, more, very flat front end, cab forward. That kind
Hmm.
of speaks to me a little bit. So I think that would be fun to see that too.
Sure, sure, absolutely. I'm excited to see what's to come. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the next question. Where do you think the automotive industry is going to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years? I know you mentioned the EVs and how it's going there, but combustion
Yeah.
might be gone. We don't know. Maybe not in the next 5 to 10 years, but it'll be coming. So where do you see the industry going in the next 20 years?
Yeah. I checked in my crystal ball when I retired a few years back, but obviously I'm a student of the business. I love reading about it. In fact, that's what I seem to be doing every day. But um, just about every manufacturer has made a commitment of some level to EVs. Of late, they've been pulling back a little bit and talking about hybrids, which I think is a smart first step. We got to get the infrastructure right because that's where people are going to have some heartburn, and it's going to change some perceptions. I think the EV adoption struggles are what's going to keep that evolution from moving fast, which is okay.
Hmm.
Consumer demand, that's kind of on the bubble as well. So I'd like to think that there's going to be some interesting um, changes that will involve changes to infrastructure so EV adoption can occur. But I think there's going to be something different, and I don't know what it is. And like I said, the crystal ball has been kind of put away for a little bit, but I just get the sense that people are going to look at EVs and say maybe there's something different we can do. So in 5, 10 years, check back with me and see if I had any clairvoyance on that.
Sure, absolutely will. I did some work for an airline manufacturer. I'm not going to mention any names, but they're out of France. And I spent some time with them, and they wanted me to work on some future projects with them with my electroluminescent paint. And they're developing flying taxis. So instead of EVs, you're going to have flying vehicles, things like that. They're actually on the horizon, maybe drones that are large enough to lift people from one place to the other, or even get packages delivered by drones. So, and it's happening now in Europe. I mean, it's happening as we speak. So I can kind of see that more futuristic, maybe not in the next 10, 20 years, but I feel like that might be on the horizon is, flying taxis and we're going to the air more so than staying on the ground.
So in other words, where's my flying car, right?
Yeah, right. I have my DeLorean out back, so I can get from time to time, but I can't fly anywhere.
Oh, nice, nice.
Um, well, before we leave, I understand you mentioned about Saturn a little earlier, the GM car company. Can you tell us about how you're involved with that or how that kind of ended? I know that you were technically the last employee. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, sadly I was. Yeah, the last 11 years of Saturn's existence is when I moved over there from Chevrolet, and we had a good run. We started getting some new product coming in because keep in mind, for the first 10 years, it was just about a small car. And we came out with the mid-sized car, then the small SUV. It was called the View. And then we started getting a minivan, and then the Roadster, which was the Sky, which was a really cool car. And then General Motors overall had, with the recession coming up, they got hit pretty hard financially. They were unable to secure financing to finance a bankruptcy because they needed to reorganize. GM just got too big. They had 8 big brands that just couldn't do it. So got some assistance from the government with some loans, with the stipulation they would reduce the brand structure. And so immediately 4 brands came off the table: Saturn, Pontiac, Hummer, and Saab. They also wanted Buick and GMC to go away and just leave GM with Chevrolet and Cadillac.
Wow.
So there were some fights going on with that. GM's performance in China with Buick helped save Buick here. So Saturn was on the chopping block, and originally we were going to be sold to Penske Automotive. That fell apart at the last minute. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. And so as the team was starting to go find other jobs within GM, because I was in sales operations at that point, it became my job to help wind down the brand. And so a big part of that was making sure our customers were taken care of, because Saturn was all about customer experience, and we had worked really hard to achieve that level that we did. So we helped align Saturn retailers that were going to have to go out of business with a GM dealer within the same town, typically a Chevrolet dealer, but one that we felt would fulfill the promise to the Saturn customers. So that involved making sure they got all the product training, making sure that the parts, inventory levels were appropriate for them, so we could get our customers moved over to what we called Saturn authorized service providers. Okay. And then at the same time, help that retailer exit the business, make sure that he's made whole with everything that he needed, and then internally making sure all of our documents and brand stuff was distributed to the other brands so that they had access to the information and the practices that we put into place. So that was a little sad. That was about a 1-year undertaking on my part, and kind of sad to turn off the lights, but GM did flourish after that, and I think a lot of our learnings were transferred to the other divisions, and I think that everybody became better because of it.
Well, that's good to hear that came out of that, because sometimes it's not, a silver lining that happens after that. So that's good. That's good. They might have saw what was happening ahead of time, had to move things around, and they saw it coming basically. So that's smart. That's good. It was tough to turn off the lights, but it's probably what needed to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's not something you put on your resume.
Yeah, that's very interesting though, because that's a very unique situation, and you were the guy, you were the last one, so that's pretty awesome that I get to talk to you on that. So very interesting. Well, once again, thank you for being a huge part of RustoGarage community. I look forward to your upcoming blogs. And if for all you out there, if you want to know more about VehicleNanny, visit the RustoGarage member highlight. We're going to have a member highlight with him posted in our description, with the member highlight that we did with him back about a year ago, maybe, I believe. But thank you very much, Bill Taylor, VehicleNanny, as I should say. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to working with you in the future. So thank you so much for being on here today.
Well, thanks, Pete. It was great to finally meet you, and I appreciate everything that you and Lisa do for the community.
Well, thank you so much. We enjoy doing it. We love what we do. So thanks for being a part of it. And
gladly.
Next time, everybody.